Welcome, everyone. Joe with ECRM here at our Impulse Sessions in Destin, Florida. And with me is Tia Ellis, who is the founder of Wildflower Insight. And today we're going to discuss what brands really need to know how to pitch and get purchase orders from their buyer meetings. So, Tia, thank you so much for joining us. And before we get into the mechanics of all that, can you tell us a little bit about you and Wildflower Insight?
Absolutely. Well, I'm so excited to be here and share all of this information about how you can pitch and win purchase orders. My background, I actually used to be a broker. So I've helped founders sell over $200 million worth of product across all 50 states, from health and wellness to food and beverage. And now I get to teach founders how to do it themselves. I found that a lot of the time founders don't need somebody to pitch in the buyer meeting for them. They just need to understand the retail landscape, what buyers look for, what they expect, what they want to see, what they don't want to see. And a lot of the times buyers want to hear from the founders themselves. And we get to empower founders how to do that and navigate those retail buyer meetings so that they can win and also maintain great relationships and navigate them to win.
Awesome. So we have three different things to talk about, right? You have the prep, then you have the actual meeting itself, and then the follow-up, right? And each of these has very specific things they need to know about. So let's start with the prep, right? How should a brand prep for a buyer meeting? What's involved? What do they need to know? What kind of things do they need to have ready before they actually get into that space with the buyer, whether it's in the buyer's office or here at an ECRM session?
One of the things that we teach our founders is within our winning pitch deck template, and there are really 10 main slides, but one of the slides specifically really stands out in regards to prep, and it is the retailer alignment slide. And what you really want to include there is explaining why your product fits on their shelves, but also why your company and your mission align with the incentives and the programming and the goals for that category and for that retailer and for that buyer. And so when you can kind of explain, like maybe there is a huge initiative on healthy food products, or there is something going on about, they're doing huge donation and philanthropy in partnership with X, Y, and Z organization, or they've just been featured as, top 10 business in America to work for culture. If you're able to tie in how your product and your company and your brand are in align with that retailer, with that buyer, with their goals and those initiatives, that's how you kind of stand out, because you have to kind of think about it from the buyer's perspective. They are being pitched to all of the time. Everybody likes to think that they are super special. Unfortunately, I have to be the one that tells people, you're not all the time special. And the way that you become special is by how you treat people in those meetings. If you're always somebody that's asking for, hey, can you give me attention? Or, hey, can I get a meeting? Or can I, have a review time? Or can you put my product on your shelf? Everybody is asking for that. That's not special. The way that you become special is by showing them, hey, I understand your category. I've actually walked in your stores. I've seen those shelves. I've seen that you have this miss. There's an empty space. There's an opportunity here, and you're not making money where you could be. This is how our product fits. This is in alignment with your company, your retailer, your branding, like everything. We're going to help you win. That's the biggest thing for prep. And I think buyers really appreciate that, because then you can go straight into the meeting and explain that. And the whole conversation shifts from feeling like they're sitting and listening to a presentation to really more of a, casual conversation where you're really talking about how you both can win together. And I think that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions with founders when they go into these buyer meetings, is they think, it's going to be me standing on stage with a microphone, and they're going to be watching kind of like how you would in a seminar. And that's not how buyer meetings should go. It should be very open, very conversational, very collaborative, because retail buyers are looking for partners. They want to bring brands and people in that are going to, again, represent them well, but also be good, long-lasting partners. They're not looking for transactional relationships.
So it goes without saying, although I think it needs to be said, that they need to do some research on the buyer's organization well in advance. They need to know it inside out, because the reason why I said it should go out without saying is that there are occasions that I know of where a brand goes into a buyer meeting and they're like, well, tell us about your company, which is like the worst thing to say. And it's like, no, you want to go in there knowing everything you can. So all of those things you just talked about, right? Knowing that if they just got this award, or this buyer's like on trend, following these trends, you need to know about the buyer. You need to do your research, find everything that you can about the buyer. I always suggest a good place to look to find some of those things is the retailer, or if it's a food service operator, whatever, their organization's press releases, because like the things that they're bragging about are going to be found in there, but also research the actual buyer, the person themselves. Look them up on LinkedIn, talk to other people, see if they've met with that buyer before, kind of get an idea of what they're like, what they respond to. Do they like jokes? Do they want a little icebreaker? Do they have a favorite sports? Something to kind of relax and set the tone. So what are your thoughts on that, and what do you tell the brands you work with about researching the buyer?
Well, we call it cyber stalking, and this is something that you kind of have to tread lightly with. It's not, please don't be one of those people that ends up on the news because you've researched a little too much. But there's an appropriate amount of research that you can do with buyers, with organizations, with understanding, like PR. Press release is a great way to learn about what they're excited about and what they're proud about, but also on LinkedIn. So like if you know who your buyer is, you know who you're going to meet with, you can search the buyer on LinkedIn. Hopefully you can find them, and then you can also see the posts and the things that they're getting tagged in, that they're engaging with, the things that they're liking, because those things matter to them, and they're easy conversations to start. Yes. Definitely.
Love the fact that you brought up LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is a really passive way of staying in front of the buyer, or getting in front of the buyer before you physically get in front of them. Well, if you follow them, again, you may not want to reach out and send a connection invite, but you could follow everybody. Follow them, and if they're post shows up in your feed before you meet with them, put a thoughtful comment on there. Start engaging with their posts. This way, when you meet with them, they're like, "Oh, I know this person already."
Yeah, or I remember you, or I've seen your comments, or that actually was really insightful, and it becomes less of this cold pitch, cold call. Even when you're in person, it can still feel very bare, very, kind of difficult to warm up. And if you've already done some of the research and the prep and the reach out beforehand, it makes the in-person conversation so much easier. It makes it feel natural. And it really, sometimes it's nice for them, because you have to think about when buyers are doing review schedules, they typically review once a year, or, every other year. Occasionally you'll see a brand do rolling reviews, but when you're thinking about, the buyer is going to take 20 minutes of their time to sit with you, they're sitting at a desk and they're rolling in suppliers. They're having meeting after meeting for, sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5 days. And the way that you stand out is by doing a little bit of that prep work beforehand, because then it's like, oh, hey, it's great to meet you. I actually really love that post. I thought that was really insightful. Would love to hear your thoughts if you've seen X, Y, or Z in the industry. Knowing, what they're posting about, knowing what they are valuing, and knowing even, again, what the retailer is valuing, even following, if it's, let's say it's Walmart, follow the top VPs at Walmart, see what they're saying. And you kind of get this, it's almost like getting insider information into what's going on to the conversation and the people that you're pitching to. And when you do that, it feels, again, so organic, like a normal conversation. I think a lot of founders miss it. Like it's such a nerve-wracking interview. It feels like, your first job interview, that it just is so uncomfortable, and you don't want to mess it up. You want to nail it. You want to make it perfect. But when you can take all of that aside and think of it as a professional conversation and treat it like that in a very respectful way, everybody in that room can feel that. And that's what you want to do. You want the buyers to invest in you and bet on you as the human, as the founder, right? And buyers are also people. Buyers make mistakes. Everybody makes mistake, and it's good to be able to bring that human element in.
Gotcha. Yes, definitely. And in their prep work, when they're putting together their pitches, right? You've talked about 3 types of pitches. Like what should they have ready? With the limited knowledge that they would have of the person they're going to be meeting with, how should they put it together? What should be included? How much data and versus images? What should they do?
Well, there are 3 types of pitches that a product founder potentially will need to master. So the first one is to the customer. Let's say you've got an innovative chip product. It's got some functionality, protein maybe. So you've got this protein chip. You're selling it to the customer. The customer wants to know, why does this taste good? Is it healthy for me? Is it going to make me feel better? Like, it's all personal, but it's the pitch to the customer. Then you've got the pitch to potentially an investor. Let's say you get a large order and you need somebody to back you financially. The investor may or may not be your customer. And so you have to be able to explain to them how their investment that they're going to give you is going to give them money back in 5 to 7 years. And then you have the pitch to the retail buyer. And the retail buyer is they're working for a corporation. And a lot of the times, people that work for corporations like to perform well. They like to do their job well. They want to hit their internal KPIs. They want to go up for the next, job opportunity or promotion. That buyers are not exclusive to that. And so when you can kind of explain how your product, when you're pitching to a retail buyer, when you explain how your product is going to perform well for them in their category and help them hit their goals, their internal KPIs, their, category levels that they in sales that they want to hit, that's when the conversation shifts from it's all about you, and actually now it's about me, and you're gonna help me. And that's when it becomes very difficult for the buyer to be like, not today, I'm not really into it. Like that's not, I don't want to take a shot on you. But when you can convince them that I'm actually gonna win, and I'm gonna help you win and hit your goals, it becomes very difficult for them to say no.
That's right. You want to make sure you pitch with the buyer's needs in mind.
Yes.
Right? Not yours. Like you mentioned earlier, everyone loves their own baby.
Yeah.
So it's the best thing in the world. But the thing is, when you get in front of that buyer, it's all about them. It's all about them. What are you going to do to help them, make them look good, like you said, and help them to succeed? And you got to show them that. So everything you're putting together, it's got to be towards that purpose. So that's the prep work. Now we're getting into the meeting itself, right? What's going on here all day. Before we get into the specifics of executing the actual buyer meeting, what are some common misconceptions about buyer meetings, and where do some brands fail in the meeting, even though they may have a great product?
Biggest misconception, and we see this every single time, is we actually talked about it a little bit. The founder will go in and pitch, and they think that the slides are super important. They think that it's structured. They think that they, have to hit every single thing. They can't jump around. They can't be interrupted with questions. And it becomes very, very transactional, and it feels salesy, and the buyers pick up on that immediately. Whereas if you, let's say you had a tech issue, right? Like your slides don't even open.
Yeah.
Are you able to have the conversation? Are you able to talk in a situation where you're just, here's my brand, here's the product, I know my slides, I know the pitch, I know the script inside, outside, and when they ask questions, I can jump around visually in my mind to keep it on track, but it still feels organic. And that's, if you get one thing out of the interview, is the buyer meeting should feel like a professional conversation and not something that is scripted, it's scheduled, it's rigid. That if that's how it feels, it's not going to win.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, it's discussion is such an important part of that meeting, because that's where you really dig in and find out if there is a fit for a long-term partnership. It's numbers or slides alone are not going to do it. Got to have that conversation. And it's a great learning opportunity for the brand too, because you want to solicit feedback from the buyer. Each of these meetings, you should come away with one of two things, hopefully both, but one being a follow-up that can lead to business. But the second is insights on how to make your brand or your operations or whatever better. And so that you should get, you go to ECRM, it's like 50 focus meetings. And so get their input, really tap into their brains, and they will give you feedback. They'll tell you what you need. If it's not a right fit at that moment, they will give you the information you need to make it a right fit.
Well, and one of the best questions that I love to encourage founders to ask if they've had a buyer meeting, or if they're speaking with somebody that could potentially be a decision maker, is once you've gone through the whole meeting, you've done the pitch, everything, you're shaking hands, you're walking off, right before you leave, you can say, hey, this is one of my first times I've done a pitch like this. I would just love some feedback. If you've got any type of information on how I could be better, I'd love to learn, and I want to do this the right way. I'm looking to be, a true partner. I want to make sure that I'm doing the right things the way that they should be done. And feedback is so greatly appreciated. If it's good, if it's bad, if it's ugly, please give all of it, because that's only going to help and encourage. And when you can do that from a place that's really genuine, again, people are human. People want to help other people, and they will, like you said, they'll give you the feedback, but you have to take that and then actually apply it. The other thing that we love to encourage founders to ask is, what is your ideal timeline? So if you know that they're reviewing, for this upcoming year, and maybe you don't get a call back, but you've asked the question, what's the ideal timeline? Do you review this schedule? Is it an annual? Is it biannual? What does that look like? It also gives you insight into the next time that you should be following up. So you're not constantly, hey, I'm just curious when it is. Like you already know, you've asked the question, and then 2-3 months prior to the next review schedule, you are sending a follow-up. Hey, it was so great to meet with you last year. Since we've spoken, I've listened to your feedback. I'd love an opportunity to share more information with you. And then also, we've created 1 or 2 different, opportunity lines or products or something for you to review based off of, additional opportunities that we've seen, or, spaces in your category that, you don't have at the moment. We've created this opportunity, and we would love for you to consider. And the whole thing shifts on, wow, they've paid attention to my timeline. They've paid attention to my review. They've actually updated. They're coachable, and the whole conversation completely shifts, and it becomes something that, again, is something that they want to have. They want to encourage and have partnership.
Yeah, and that's important for ECRM sessions, especially because we try to time these sessions where the majority of the buyers that are attending are close to or in the review process. But not all of them are going to be. And you may be meeting with someone who actually just did their review a month ago, which means they're not even going to consider your products for another 10 months.
Right.
So you have to keep that in mind. Many of them will be ready, but some of them won't. And you just have to have patience. And by asking those questions, you could set your follow-up timelines afterwards. And we're going to get into follow-ups in a little bit. But so the next thing I want to ask is like the structure, right? Whether it's a 10-minute meeting at the Arrangement Discovery Hub, or a planning session that's 20 minutes, or if you got an hour, they don't give you hours that much anymore. But let's say you got a half an hour or an hour at the buyer's office, right? How do you structure the actual time from the beginning when you walk in? And so take us through what an ideal meeting should look like, from the hello, hey, how's it going, to the pitch, to the discussion. How do you lay it out?
That's such a great question. And let's just assume you've got 20 minutes, right? 20 minutes is a really generous amount of time. It's not too much. It's not too little. You can get a lot done. If you've got 20 minutes, the first 1 to 2 minutes should be a setup. So before you even walk into that meeting, before you walk anything, you should have the slides downloaded on your computer. There should be no tech issues. And then you should also have them printed on a piece of paper for absolute worst case scenario backup. And then when you walk in, it is 2 minutes of setup time. And during that setup time, I always encourage people to take 2 people with you. So one person is, fiddling with the computer, setting it up, acting like they're getting it all ready to go. It's already ready to go. And the other person is doing small talk. So, how are you? How's your day going? Like, can I get you, is there coffee nearby? Would you like one? We'll get this set up. And so it's just very personal. It is strategic, small talk, conversation, relationship building. And then from minute 2 to minute 14, that is the pitch. That is the meat and potatoes. It is the, 10 slides on why you started, what your mission is, your story, and how your product is changing people's lives. So you have to make sure that when you're explaining your product, like, why did you start? Yes, of course, super important, but also what is the problem that it's solving, and why are their shoppers going to buy your product? I think that if you can hit those 3 things, those are really, really important. But then also packing in, the last 5-6 minutes of the meeting for question and answer. And also it's not just question and answer for the buyers to be asking, it's also questions for you so that you can follow up, as we were just talking about. The timeline, what the expectations are, what their goals are, and it becomes very casual, and it's professional, but it's also very casual relationship building, because you've packed bookend times, allocated time to have small talk at the beginning, relationship building, and then also small talk at the end, a little bit more relationship building. And you've been able to go through your pitch in 10 to 12 minutes. That's kind of the goal, is about 1 minute per slide. Gotcha.
So, and I think it's also important for them for brands to know that you need to build in flexibility, like build in scenarios where you may come across a buyer that's like, I'm not interested in the slides. They just want to have a conversation.
Yep.
How are you going to react then? Like, or maybe they're really into data and they want to focus on there. So I think it's important to plan those scenarios in advance so that you don't have a stutter step during the meeting. It's like, okay, if they want to go in this direction, here's what I'm going to focus on. If they want to just focus on the products themselves, this is what I'm going to do. And then do everything that you can to make sure every second is valuable. So, for example, maybe find out if you have a lot of different products, which ones are they definitely not interested in or not relevant, and get those off the table. So you could just focus on what's completely relevant to the buyer. And that's where you use that setup time for, right? You're asking the questions. Which ones are not good for you? Boom. Okay, those are gone. Now we're going to focus on this. But what are your thoughts on, like, if some of the brands that you work with, has that happened where they had to, like, change direction mid-meeting?
Oh yeah. So there really are three types of buyer profiles, and the one that you're just talking about is the agitator, is what we call them, and they know what they want. They are no BS. They don't care about the slides. They've been doing it, probably a seasoned vet. They've been doing this for a lot of years, and they want to know the answers to their questions. So you might start in your first 5 minutes, and they could completely cut you off and say, that's cool, but I want to know about your pricing and your margins, or I want to know about your marketing plan and your sell through, or I want to know why you would fit with our retailer, or why are you better, show me your competitor slide. And so you have to be able to know so confidently your deck and the things that you're going to say, where if the slides don't work, or if you have a buyer that asks questions or has you jump around, you can prioritize that and then get back to all of the things that that you're planning to go in and pitch, but you have to be able to work them back in and loop them around and create this very, again, casual conversation where it is high pressure, it is high stakes, but you have to be adaptable. And I think that's the main word.
Yeah. And this goes back to practice, right? Do dry runs of your pitch, have somebody ask questions,
and
have someone interrupt you, take you in a different direction, pressure test your pitch before you get into it, so that this way when it happens, you kind of know how to segue.
Absolutely.
So now the discussion part, which, like you said, it's extremely important, and it should be casual, but it's still leading towards a goal. So what should the discussion look like?
The discussion primarily should be the presentation, of course. Like, you've got your slides, you've got the things that you're going to talk about. But at the end of the day, if you get anything out of the buyer meeting or the discussion, it is the feeling that you are a hard worker, you are going to be coachable, you've got a product that will win, and you have a plan on how to make it sell. If you can hit those 4 points in a buyer meeting, it becomes really challenging for them to be like, not interested. Because most people are missing, 2, if not 3 of those items. Everybody thinks I've got a great product. Here's why. Here's all about my things. But, everybody thinks they've got a great product. But if you can explain to the buyer why it's going to sell, how you're going to make sure it sells, and how it becomes successful in store, why it's a good fit for them, how you're going to help them hit their category goals, all without, again, feeling like you're pushing or selling them. That's the whole point. And then people will invest in you. People want to cheer for you. People love to cheer for the underdog.
Yes. And a no is not necessarily a no. It's more likely a not yet. And that's why part of the discussion should be getting feedback from the buyer, because then you take that feedback and it goes into our next part. And in your follow-up, that's where you kind of incorporate that feedback. And one thing I just wanted to mention, when we're talking about the discussion, and earlier we talked about the feedback, there was one brand, and this is an extreme example, but it's very illustrative in terms of it being a two-way conversation. We had a pet session a few years ago, and there was a guy from a Brazilian pet brand. He came not looking to sell, not looking to make deals. He came with the express purpose of getting feedback from the buyers he met with that he can incorporate into rebranding his products for the US market. So that's all he did, because they were only in Brazil. So he had like 35 meetings where he just picked their brains. And then he took that, went back, and based on all their feedback, rejiggered the branding, and then came back 2 years later and knocked it out of the park. So the feedback and the follow-up, which is what we're going to get into now, is so important that because the buyer's going to tell you what they want. If it's not a deal right there, or if it's not something that's feasible right at that moment, they're going to tell you what they need to, what you need to do to succeed.
Well, they will if you ask in the right
Yes.
way. If you come in with this, mentality of my product is the best, I should be here, I deserve a spot, you guys need me, they're probably not going to be helpful at all. They're probably not going to give you any feedback. But if you can come in and, maybe you're not ready, maybe it's a not right now, you didn't get, the golden ticket or whatever the case is. If you can ask for feedback and say, hey, really I'm coming from this place of growth and knowledge, and I truly am humble and I value your opinion, people are going to help you. And then that's exactly what, your example did. And it seems like it got great feedback. And
Speaking of golden tickets, we had another brand who met with a Walmart buyer 2 years ago at a session. She knew she wasn't ready to go into Walmart, but just picked her brain on what they need to do. She's like, okay, you need this packaging. You need to find secondary manufacturers, for the increased demand and all that. Spent the next year regularly communicating with that buyer and doing all those things, checking off the boxes. Then when she applied to Open Call 18 months later, golden ticket.
I love that.
So, but all based on soliciting that feedback. So we did the meeting. Meeting ends, right? Well, actually, the segue to follow-ups is the next steps. How should they ask in the meeting? How should they set up the next steps?
A great way to do it is say, hey, would love to, do you have a timeline, or when are you expecting to make decisions? What would be the ideal timeline for next steps if you choose to move forward with us, right? Like it's never when you want to work with us, what do we need next? It is, if you choose to move forward with us, what would your ideal timeline look like, just so that we can be prepared if you do decide to partner with us. And it becomes very, non-aggressive. It's very, again, partnership forward, and it allows them to kind of sit in the driver's seat and share information with you. And so if you receive that calendar, because typically they have all of this information, like they know by week, essentially, like they're going to have decisions made here. This is the review schedule. This is the, top 10 move forward. We need to have POs sent at this date. This is when product needs to arrive at the warehouse. This is when on shelf date. I mean, all of this, they've got all of that information. And if you ask for it, you can then very strategically follow up with those time periods. Or if you are moving forward, you can actually say, hey, I've noticed that I'm just wanting to make sure we're still in line with the calendar you sent. I noticed that the POs are not on time. Is there something that you need from us? Is there something that you're missing, just to make sure that you don't get left in the dust, and you can stay on track of it? And you also, again, you're showing that you're being a true partner.
Yeah. Again, the buyer's going to give you the guidance. You just got to ask for it, and then they'll tell you everything you need to know. So the traditional follow-up things, right? Communication, samples, timing, getting ghosted. What are your recommendations for those elements of follow-up and how to deal with them?
Getting ghosted is unfortunately something that will happen. It's really not a matter of if, it is when. And it might be, you had the meeting and then you hear nothing ever. That's getting ghosted. It could be you've had great conversation for 6-7 months, even post meeting, and then all of a sudden, like, something happens and you don't hear from them for 2 months. You don't know what's happened. And it's, most of the time, it is not the founder that is the problem. It is that the buyer is just very busy. They have some of the most demanding, busiest jobs on the planet, and they are not just managing, you as a potential supplier. They've got 50 to 200 brands that they're working with, different departments, different teams, different, just so many things that they're trying to manage. The thing that you want to make sure that you're doing, if you do get ghosted, right, like you likely will, don't follow up and say, hey, I noticed, can you give me attention? I need a review, or can we talk about this? Or, hey, have you looked over this? It is, hey, I noticed that you've been really busy, or I noticed that, you're paying attention to the trends. You're paying attention to what's going on at that retailer. So, like, let's say Walmart just won, this, big award on the Global Retailer Association or something like that. So they just won. Hey, congratulations on this. I noticed that you guys won. I always think about you guys. And also, I just wanted to let you know, since our meeting, since our conversation, I've actually gone back. We've done a little bit of research and development, and we've developed 2 new SKUs or 2 new flavors, and we'd like to offer those to you. I'm happy to send samples if you might be interested, to provide feedback at the very least. Always here cheering for you. If there's anything I can do, looking forward to talking next year. And if there's anything that changes in the meantime with the review cycle or schedule, please let me know.
I think you have a great point couched in there, and I want to make sure I reiterate it. And that's when you gave the example it's like, hey, I have this new thing, or you're adding value in that conversation. It's not just saying, hey, don't forget about me. Hey, you didn't get back to me. Hey, no, it's like, hey, I have this new thing. Hey, based on your feedback, I did this. So that each communication is like giving them something.
Well, yes, every single time you communicate with them, especially if you're
Mhm.
getting ghosted, you're not asking for anything, you're
Yeah.
adding value to the
Mhm.
conversation. So you've, developed this new thing you'd love for them to review, or you're wishing them a happy birthday or happy holidays, or, you just, congratulations, you guys won this award, or I saw that you were featured in this article,
Mhm.
or, something. It's touching in, it's adding value. It is something very positive, and it is almost never asking for something. The only time to ask for something is just wanting to double check, are we in a line for your review
Mhm. Mhm.
timeline, or has anything changed? That is it. You are not asking, especially if you've already been ghosted, you are not asking for extra things. You will not get extra things.
Mhm.
You are adding value, you are adding positivity, you are showing that you're coachable,
Mhm.
you're a good partner, and
Yeah,
that's what you got to do.
that's so important. And what about frequency, right? Obviously, you're not going to be emailing them every day.
Not every
Don't want to
day,
do that.
not
But
every week.
what's like a good frequency for someone if you're getting ghosted?
Mhm.
How often should you ping them?
It really is so subjective, but a good kind of ideal timeline would be once every 30 to 40 days. So it's
Mhm.
not exactly at that month mark, but I would also structure it around holidays, like simple holidays, not, of
Mhm.
course, not Christmas and Thanksgiving and in December. Those November months, they get kind of tough because it's hard to,
Mhm.
everybody's busy all of the time.
Yeah.
Everybody's on vacation. Like, you're probably not going to get a lot of feedback or follow up as a new potential
Mhm.
vendor. But something like St. Patrick's Day, or Valentine's Day, or 4th of July, even just holidays that wherever your buyer is located, if you're stateside in the US and they're celebrating US based holidays,
Mhm.
say something in celebratory, or hey,
Yeah.
something that just is kind and relevant and just pings your name in their inbox. But again, it's not asking for something. If they have to do something extra for you, it's not going to happen.
Gotcha. So, final thoughts. Like, what are maybe some things they should avoid, and some kind of like a final thought to leave these founders with.
Final thought. There's one big thing to avoid, and this doesn't really even it doesn't really fit into the conversation, but
Hey,
I'll tell you,
yeah.
the one thing that you'd be surprised at how many founders make this mistake.
Mhm.
When you are, and this is my opinion, this is
Mhm.
what we've seen success with our founders, with our presentations. When you're pitching in a buyer meeting and you have your pricing slide, I almost never suggest putting your cost to the retailer on the slide. So like what the retailer would buy your product at, I almost never put it on the slide.
Mhm.
Instead, what I suggest putting on the slide is the suggested retail price, so which is what the customer will
Mhm.
purchase once it's on the shelf. And then from there, you can ask questions to the buyer when it comes time to pricing discussion about, what are the margin expectations for this category? And, do you expect us to go through a distributor? Is it possible to go direct to your warehouse facilities and then have it distributed
Mhm.
to the stores? Because the price that you're going to sell to the retailer is going to be completely dependent on that. Like how many different people are taking a
Yeah.
piece of it and what volumes potentially look like. But when you put that price on the slide, you completely lock yourself in. And that's before you even know if there's a
Yeah.
distributor involved, or if, it's a little bit of stores or a lot of it of stores, or,
Mhm.
there's so many variables. And I think that really kind of, just to wrap up the conversation, our interview, is that the buyer meeting is a conversation. And when you put things on the slide that are very hard, very concrete, it becomes difficult to navigate and negotiate.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, a buyer meeting is a negotiation, and you have to be prepared to be able to be flexible and, advocate for yourself and your brand, but also you can't say yes to something that's going to be harmful or hurtful for you. And so you have to protect the integrity of what those margins would look like.
Gotcha. Actually, that's a really good point. And I do have one more question that I want to stick in there because it's relevant to all of this. What is the importance of patience for these founder-led brands?
It's everything. You have to be patient. You have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to be coachable. You have to be willing to get back up and try again. The odds are that you go in for your first buyer meeting and you knock it out of the park and it's a, yes, and there's no hiccups, there's no waiting, there's no delays, there's no ghosting. I have yet to see that happen.
Yeah.
You could be the one that does it, right?
Mhm.
There's always a unicorn out there, but most of the time, founders, especially in buyer meetings, will get way more no's before they see the yes, and it's all foundational. And like you said, it's not a no. It's not a no. It's just a not right now.
Yeah.
But you can take that feedback, you can build and grow and become better, so that you have better odds and better chances and better conversations, and you ultimately get the best partnership for your brand. Because it's not just, you don't want to just take any retail opportunity. Like, that's not good for your brand. You need to be strategic with the retail partners that you're pitching to, and it has to make sense for you as a founder as well. If it doesn't, it's wasting everybody's time, because your customer might not be going to their stores, and their customers might not be buying your products, and then everybody's unhappy. Where when you do a little bit more of this prep and strategic, partnership thinking, if you pitch and you don't win, and you try again and you do the feedback, and then you really think about, okay, well, who would my ideal retail partnership look like? And then you've built the pitch, it's custom to them, it makes sense, it's in alignment with all of their goals and reviews and category, and you knock it out of the park, you win the opportunity. It's good for everybody, and that's where you're supposed to be, not just trying to take everything and get a yes from everyone.
Yeah, and that takes time. Even if they say yes, if it's a big retailer, a national chain, they said yes right here at this meeting, you may not be on their shelves for 18 months.
Easily.
With a yes. So you can imagine, if it's a no or not yet, it's going to add that time. If you miss a review date by a month, that's another year on top of that, which means it won't get on the shelf for 2 years. So that's part of the game. So you have your short term. Some retailers independent retailers, they'll be able to get you on the shelf faster. So you have those short term goals. But if you want these larger retailers, it's going to take time. So just be prepared for that. I think that's something that a lot of them go in thinking it's going to happen right away. And then just the normal process of it. They like all those things you talked about, dealing with wholesalers, maybe having to adjust or tweak the packaging, all of those back and forths takes time, and people need to know. Patience is so important.
Yeah. You said it. Yeah. Can't even top that. You absolutely, patience is so important, and you got to have it. Otherwise, you're not gonna make it.
No, definitely. You can be frustrated all the time. So how do people find you?
Oh, on LinkedIn is probably the best place. I've been very active lately, trying to post and do socials. My name is Tia Ellis, and the company is Wildflower Insight. I'm happy to connect, happy to share. Oh, actually, we share quite a bit of resources, insight information, calculators, margin thing. I mean, just lots of different resources. So
awesome. All right, well, check it out, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.